At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, June the 12th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams is produced the program. Let's get at it. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So NHL fans will be up again tonight. Game 4 of the Stanley Cup playoffs is finally upon us. Edmonton Oilers in Florida tonight for Game 4. Down 2-1 really feels like a must-win tonight for the Oilers, and hopefully to bring a cup back to Canadian soil for the first time since 1993. Amazing stuff. All right, I'm going to keep talking about Summer McIntosh. Absolutely incredible. So yesterday she broke her own world record in the 400-meter individual medley. She has the 3 fastest times in history in that discipline. She has set 5 Canadian records and 3 world records in this Canadian Olympic trials alone. 18 years old, absolutely amazing. Love her. All right, so the Canada Games torch relay began yesterday in Ottawa. Of course, going to make its way to this province. The Games open on August the 8th. Tony Wakeham, leader of the PCs, talking about the fact that the province has not funded the teams appropriately. So there is money and there is a kit that's sent to all the athletes, most of which is kind of off the field or off the court or off the track kind of swag. Did a little bit of sniffing around yesterday to see exactly what was going on in the fundraising effort that families are having to entertain to equip their son or daughter to participate in the games. It's significant. So apparently uniforms for the athletes are not included, by and large, for funding support coming from the provincial government. And some of you probably couldn't care less about this, but it's a big deal for young athletes and their families. So you think about sports like, I don't know, pluck one. I spoke to different sports organizations yesterday afternoon and some families, like baseball. Apparently, the parents, in the fundraising and out-of-pocket expense, to put 2 uniforms, because you have to have a home and away uniform, 2 sets of uniforms on their athletes. They went and got some corporate sponsorship for bags to carry bats in and the like. So there's a lot of fundraising going on. And here we are, the year of sport. I wonder what the circumstances are in other provinces in the country for equipping their athletes to travel to the national summer games. So I don't think Tony Wakeham's too far off the mark. Yes, the provincial government has put forward some support. And yes, parents and families and children are doing an extraordinary amount of fundraising, simply trying to get the appropriate equipment to participate in the games representing the province. I'm not so sure we're on the right track there, but if you want to take it on, we can do it. All right, so there's going to be a press conference lunchtime today. The Minister of Justice and Public Safety, John Haggie, apparently the province is going to launch what they call an online crime dashboard. Not surprised this is coming, given the comments coming from the minister there a couple of weeks ago about the fact we need to do a better job in reporting the crime numbers, to give people the realistic, on-time update about trends in crime where they live. We all know that it's important to get the real numbers out there because it seeps into our psyche. When you hear 1 or 2 or 10 or 12 or 100 bad stories, it really does impact how we think and we feel regarding public safety. And I've said this before, and I'm going to stick with it. I got a little bit of pushback from some of my colleagues in the media, but too bad. The media has to do a better job here too. Because I know it really does get some clicks and it gets some attention to your television station or your radio station when the sensational stories of crime, serious crimes for sure, are featured. No, we have to tell the stories. We have to report the news. But I think we should temper it insofar as how we focus on things like crime and punishment. You want to take it on, we can do it. I'm curious to see what that crime dashboard will look like into the future. And that's an important topic, I believe. Obviously, it is. Now, we need an update. You know, we heard from the Crown Prosecutor's Office about how overworked they are, how many case files are sitting on individual prosecutors' desks, and some of which very serious matters. Again, we will temper how we talk about it. We'll get the facts out and the real numbers. But it'd be nice to get an update from the Crown Prosecutor's Office. And also, insofar as Supreme Court and scheduling goes. Mike Murray, a former Crown Prosecutor, brought this to my attention, and it makes a lot of sense. Apparently, we're so loath to potentially have scheduling conflicts in the Supreme Court that many times when the Supreme Court is open, some courtrooms are going unused. So there's got to be a better way, maybe to mimic how we schedule court cases in provincial court. Because if there becomes a circumstance where there is an overlap and a conflict, then reschedule. We hear it all the time when we look at the court docket, so put that back out there. 2 more on that front. Every time we talk about the state of Her Majesty's Penitentiary, I know many people listening this morning don't care. Don't care what the conditions are like, but of course it's important for staff, and it is important for the inmates, right? Yeah, and 60% of them are sitting there, haven't been convicted of anything, and it does lead to a lot of problems. Whether you talk about the lack of correctional officers to even allow for visitation. So yes, they committed a crime, and absolutely they have to do the time. But can't see their lawyer, can't see their family. What do you think that means for potential tensions and violence and issues inside the walls of the penitentiary? Add to it. For the tough on crime crowd, I get it. But at the same time, inmates are being granted double time instead of time and a half. Why? Because of the conditions in the pen. So we can't have it both ways. Last one on that front. Had a call from Lynn Paddock yesterday, PC member and the Shadow Minister of Justice, talking about the unfunded liabilities in the Uniformed Services Pension Plan. Ewan Jones, who's a former member of law enforcement, he sent me a note yesterday publicly on Twitter. That's why I used his name. He put in an access to information request. So the numbers we're using is it's only 25% funded, consequently 75% unfunded. He got some numbers in 2023. At that time, the unfunded liabilities were almost $24 million. So it would be important for government to, not in one fell swoop and one stroke of a check to fill it up overnight, but tell us what the plan is. Because people relying on their pensions, they shouldn't have to worry about it. This is the government. We're not talking about a private sector company where people got to get in line as unsecured creditors. So let's hear from the government about a plan. Plenty of feedback coming into the email inbox about things like drugs and the discarded needles. And yes, the safe injection site that's popped up in the downtown. I don't know if everyone thinks that it's simply a bad idea to provide that safe space to use clean needles and to be there just in case you overdose. I'm not against harm reduction whatsoever, but many concerns come in about simply the location and what that means and how it jives with tourism season, those types of things. We'll put it out there for your concern. Oh, if you're entertaining community cleanup, we really got to make sure that especially the kids who are participating, and you know, it's a good learning opportunity to not litter and to take pride in your community. But every single time there is one of these cleanups, certainly in this neck of the woods, the pictures of discarded needles is very concerning. So make sure, especially kids, and not just little latex gloves, maybe something a little bit more robust, like construction worker gloves or something, or use a tool to pick up, especially when you can't see what you're digging into under the brush or whatever the case may be. So put that out there for you. All right, and I still get a little... some pushback about the need for an access card to go to a landfill, and that's under the Eastern Regional Service Board. It's going to make things easier for them, but a particular emailer who frequently sends me notes about every topic under the sun, and I welcome them, But what this person has said, and probably not wrong, and this is not to encourage folks to do what he's implying, is that if you make it more difficult, what do you think is going to become of that discarded couch or washer or dryer or whatever old grout that can go to the landfill? It's going to end up in the woods. Thankfully, the service board has put it on hold for 9 months to try to help people get through the process. They're going to be changing their tune insofar as the requirement of a civic address, whether you have an Amazon delivery receipt or something or other to actually prove that you live where you say you live, is going to be good enough. And that's a good idea, because if I don't have a civic address, I can't supply one. It's just as fundamental as that. So let's take it on. Okay. Some interesting developments yesterday regarding resignations. Let's start with John Abbott. All right. So we all know the controversy that surrounded the 2021 provincial election. Questions all the way back to when the Premier, then Premier Fury, called the election in the first place, given the fact that we were in the throes of the pandemic. So we know that people who were scheduled to work at the polling stations were not going to. The handling of the special ballots was handled poorly. People would suggest bungled. And consequently, 3 particular ridings that were in dispute. And one such is St. John's East Kitty held by John Abbott. All right, so he's resigned. This before the case was supposed to go to court on Monday. I have a few questions. Number one, what does this even really mean? So, yes, Mr. Abbott has resigned his seat. He's going to remain in cabinet, and he's spoken to the media about he doesn't think his work over the last number of years has been tainted, and he's been welcomed by the community, those types of references. Okay, but what does this actually mean? If it's setting a precedent into the future about how the province and Elections NL handle special ballots, okay. Miss Coffin, of course, who lost to John Abbott by only 53 votes, not even sure she's going to run in the upcoming provincial election. John Abbott will not be running. Mr. Jim Lester, of course, is part of this court case. So is Miss Fitzgerald, Sheila Fitzgerald. Those 2 ridings, Mount Pearl North and St. Barb, Lanson Meadows. It's been suggested that the folks holding those seats at this moment in time, Lucy Stoltz and Crystalline Howell, should do what John Abbott has done and resign. Don't know if that's going to happen or not. But we still need to know what this actually really means. What does it mean for the past 4 years? Because if we say that this is a suspect result, and we don't know what the result would have been had all the special ballots been handled appropriately and people got their ballot on time and their vote was counted. So what does it mean for his pensionable years of earning? He's 45 years in the public service, so I don't think that's the biggest concern. But yes, an MHA pension has got to be part of this. So does it impact how he's been paid for the last number of years? Does it impact his pensionable years of service? I don't know. But those are some pretty big questions here. And I guess Jim Dinn is making himself available to the public today. The NDP are claiming victory on this front. And yes, we do need to ensure that the integrity of the elections is paramount. And we need to do better into the future. But I still really am not entirely sure what exactly this means. And what are the real-life implications? Beyond Mr. Abbott deciding that to forego what could be a lengthy court process, to resign, given we're just, 4 or 5 days away from where it was supposed to proceed in the courts. And, of course, there was an individual voter also impacted on part of the lawsuit. So that one. Then, things happen so quickly, it takes a moment to try to digest some of these big news items. Michael Sabia was the CEO of Hydro-Quebec, now resigning because he's been tapped by the Prime Minister to be the clerk of the Privy Council, the highest-ranking member of the public service. All right. So Mr. Sabia's professional background is well understood, a very accomplished man, no doubt about it. And, of course, he was the Deputy Minister of Finance for a number of years as well. So what does that mean for the Memorandum of Understanding? 2 of the key figures, and one on either side of the negotiations, are no longer part of it. So that would be, of course, Premier Fury and Michael Sabia. Jennifer Williams, the CEO of Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, says this doesn't change anything. The negotiations will proceed as they have been for the last number of months. What does this mean for federal government decisions regarding what we call a nation-building project insofar as the expansion of the Upper Churchill and the development of Gull Island and the 2 transmission projects required? Good idea, I would think, if we're talking about nation-building, but what does Michael Sabia's now new role as the clerk of the Privy Council mean for that deal? And what does it also mean, his absence from this negotiation? If we take Jennifer Williams, she says no big deal, but 2 key players out of it is something. Also, The issue regarding Quebec being an obstacle, and they have been for so many decades. Number one of the reasons offered regarding Muskrat Falls is that we need to get around Quebec. Then you try to blend in the conversation put forward by the Prime Minister about a national energy corridor and Quebec's resistance all these years, whether it be for transmission of electricity and or pipelines. You know the story. So how's this going to impact all of that moving forward? I think it's a fair question to be asked. Michael Sabia, no longer at the helm of Hydro-Quebec, and he seemed to be, I don't know if he was opening the doors for additional pressure to be heaped onto Hydro-Quebec to sweeten the deal for this province, as was implied by some listeners, callers, and emailers. But Michael Sabia out at Hydro-Quebec. And then continuing on with things like energy. So the Premier, John Hogan, is going to Boston next week to talk about energy. 6 Eastern premiers and 6 governors in the northeastern United States. A lot of this feels like offshore wind kind of opportunities. And, you know, they're now calling it or branding it as Energy East Partnership. Kind of feels like the rebirth of the Atlantic Loop, which is never a thing. It was never a thing. You know, the federal government talked about it, but it was just a marketing exercise. It wasn't actually technically something that was on. And, of course, everyone has walked away from it. So what does this actually mean? And in addition to that, with our office open in Boston, which I seem to think is a very good idea, many people disagree with me, so be it, to talk about energy and economic diversification and securing partnerships and opening markets and finding new partners all makes a lot of sense. But in addition to that, what we see in other provinces is they're very actively and aggressively recruiting scientists and professors and healthcare professionals. The brain drain from the United States is on. And to fast track the ability for, say, for instance, a nurse or a doctor, like take British Columbia for an example, they're bringing healthcare professionals into the fold to deliver healthcare in their province and just about virtually overnight approving their credentials. Because if you're qualified to work as a registered nurse or a doctor or any sort of discipline in healthcare in Boston, Massachusetts, your training has got to be very similar to what's required here, as are your credentials. So I would add, on top of economic concerns or economic partnerships, things like that brain drain that we can take advantage of. We need the healthcare pros in so many different disciplines. Let's put that on the Boston office agenda too. What do you think? Let's talk about it. All right. Can't read this scribble here. Oh, insofar as nation-building exercises, we haven't heard much reference to mining, specifically mining in this province. You know, look at Bay Verde. Their mining expansion is going to see some additional 1,000 workers required, but that brings upon the need to enhance services, infrastructure, and notably housing. But when we talk about nation-building and supply chains, domestically speaking, the amount of critical minerals that the world needs and wants that we are sitting on in this province is an extraordinary opportunity. Is there a nation-building project that's somewhere on someone's desk, whether it be a mining executive or otherwise, that we can indeed secure some federal assistance, support, or fast track of approval? You know, once all of these conversations began, and we can talk about electric vehicle battery plants and some of those plants that have gone by the wayside, but the extraction of and then selling it or shipping it elsewhere so that we eventually buy back the finished product. And it's not just about electric vehicle batteries, solar panels and your smartphones and your laptops. And I'm not suggesting that we're going to be building laptops in Labrador, but we should be a prime contributor to that supply chain and reap the economic benefits, which we have not done a great job of necessarily in years past. You know, you add Long Harbour to, you know, upping our game on that front. And so there you go. Let's talk about it. All right, quickly, a couple of quickies before we get to you. I want to say good morning, congratulations to Jeff Eaton and all the team at Young Adult Cancer Canada. This year they're celebrating their 25th anniversary of helping young adults who have been diagnosed with cancer right across the country. Jeff Eaton is a real powerhouse, and he brings that attitude. Of course, he's still in his 25 years of recovery as well. He brings a lot of energy and passion to it. I know on a personal front that young adults who have dealt with Young Adult Cancer Canada and attended some of their retreats, what have you, have really reaped extraordinary personal benefit. There's lots of supports out there where we talk about young children who have been diagnosed with cancer, many other supports out there for older adults who have been diagnosed with cancer. But as a young adult, when you're just getting out of university, say, or you're just starting your family, there wasn't really much out there specifically for that age group upon that scary diagnosis. So congratulations to Yak. Congratulations to Jeff Eaton and his entire team. 25 years is a fantastic milestone. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 4. Good morning, Chess Crosby. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. And a beautiful morning it is, too.
Tis that.
Yeah, I thought I'd call in about yesterday's news that Mr. John Abbott has resolved a litigation under the controverted elections provisions of the Elections Act that arises out of 4 years ago, the infamous COVID election. And it's part of a settlement agreement. Otherwise, this case was going to go to trial on the 14th of June. And Mr. Abbott decided, I guess, that it was there'd be less of a beating for himself and possibly the Liberal Party if he resolved matters by way of settlement rather than dragging it out through the public eye for 2 weeks in a trial. So that's the upshot. And I just want to remind everybody, because, of course, we like to put these things behind us, what a horror show that election was, and make the point that Premier Fury, as he was at the time, called that election into the face of predictions from Public Health Canada that there would be an upsurge of COVID-19. And I think it was, I'd term it as reckless of him to do that when he did, because he did not have to call the election on the 15th of January, 2021. He had 7 months he could play with and choose a time when COVID-19 was likely to be less of a menace. Anyway, the predictable happened, and we had an election that was dragged out by 6 weeks beyond what it should have been.
Okay, I understand that, and we, of course, covered it extensively and heard from many voters across the province during the throes of that plagued election. Quick question. You mentioned the fact that this is part of a settlement. What are the other parts of the settlement beyond Mr. Abbott's resignation?
Well, there were three cases. One was taken by Alison Coffin, who was the NDP member in the district St. John's East Kitty. That's the one that got the attention yesterday. There were also 2 others, one by a PC candidate, Sheila Fitzgerald, on the Northern Peninsula. She's since moved away and has work up in northern Canada, and Jim Lester out in Mount Pearl, who's actually going to run again. So those other 2 cases were also resolved. But the thing is, Patty, these things take a long time to win their way through the courts, and there'd not be that much point in carrying on with a trial, the remedy for which would be a declaration that the election of the person who was declared elected is invalid if there's now intervened another general election, as there will be sometime before October. It'll have to be called in September, I think. So the point is this, that waiting until after the general election would render these trials more or less moot. However, this trial that for Alison Coffin and John Abbott was set to come up very soon, a few days' time, like it was going to start imminently on the 14th of June.
Okay.
And so it made sense for Mr. Abbott to settle. However, I do think it gives the Liberal Party a black eye because it reminds the electorate of what a shag-up we went through. And it, frankly, casts a pall of illegitimacy over the whole thing, because if 3 members were, I'll put it this way, wrongfully elected, then the majority that the Fury and then Hogan government has enjoyed in the intervening years is very much under question.
Okay, so political black eyes and the rest of those optics, What realistically, pragmatically changes as a result of Mr. Abbott's resignation? Like, people will ask me questions about, what about the amount of money he's been paid as an MHA and a cabinet minister since 2021? What about his years of pensionable service that he's achieved since 2021? So, outside of the politics of it all, which does play an important role, so what are the actual real-life implications for those out there listening who aren't really that concerned with whether or not there's a Liberal black guy, but wondering what this realistically means?
Well, it's not going to affect any of those things. What Mr. Abbott might have been paid, what Ms. Coffin may not have been paid. Those things are, water under the bridge at this point in time. And it doesn't throw into question, the lawfulness of anything the government has done in the meantime, in my view. What it does do is remind people that the Elections Act and its administration badly broke down 4 years ago. There were major problems with it, but the present government, and it was present Premier Hogan, who was the minister in cabinet responsible to fix the problems with the act. Mr. Hogan has done nothing to fix the problems with the Elections Act and to modernize it and to try and prevent similar screw-ups from happening in the future. I think that's worthwhile for people to remind themselves it was Hogan who was supposed to fix this.
Insofar as a fix goes, hopefully there is no other circumstance into the future where something like a global pandemic trips up an election, and whether or not there's even a justifiable reason to call an election during said medical concerns. So what does that mean to modernise the Elections Act? Some specifics here, because the handling of special ballots, we're always going to have them, and for necessary reasons. So if you had a couple of items that you could use as amendments to the Elections Act, they would include what?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't been involved in the process of trying to, reform and fix the act. But there are many things that could be done. What happened was, to remind your listeners, is we were going to have a voting day on the 13th of February. That's what was fixed when Fury went and got the writ of election. But on the day before that, the entire process of voting in person was suspended, so that most voting took place by special ballot, which means mail-in ballot. And the rules around mail-in ballots themselves changed several times. So any fixing of the act might want to address, how often the rules can be changed about mail-in ballots and so on, and maybe even whether there should be a review done as to whether calling an election at a given time might be exposing the public to undue risk. In this case, it was undue risk of infection, and provisions put in the act for temporizing or waiting until a time when it was safer, when it would be safer to do so. That wasn't needed this time around, but who knows about the next time? And you learn your lessons and you put your fixes in.
Yeah, and one of the key reasons, and you can correct me if you believe I'm wrong, one of the key reasons why in-person voting went by the wayside is that the poll workers in droves refused to work. So that, of course, forced the hand of elections NL into the special ballot world. So how could a piece of legislation address something like the absence of poll workers? Some of these, maybe there's a way to do that, but I'm not sure how that looks.
Well, you're quite right, but that's just a symptom of the general public being exposed.
Oh, I understand that.
Seen at the time as added risk.
I understand that entirely. I'm just wondering, because we are talking about modernising a piece of legislation, how something like actual access to poll workers who are still willing to work regardless of what we're talking about. There could be a variety of things under the sun which might lead to polling station workers to want to or not want to go to work. And I'm not going to go through a laundry list of what might happen, but sure. I just wonder how legislatively that could be addressed.
Well, maybe legislatively in that case is not the answer. The answer is don't call an election into the teeth of public authority forecasts of increasing risk. In other words, an upsurge in COVID.
Fair enough. Anything else you'd like to add to this morning? So I guess one more question for me. Generally speaking, in these types of cases, there will be the need for some solution to beyond, like for instance, Mr. Abbott resigning. So generally there's a want or a demand for something to actually change, whether that be financial compensation or an overturning of one decision or another. Is there anything to that? Is there any teeth beyond the politics of it all?
Well, I'm not quite sure what the question is, but I imagine John Abbott, to someone for whom I have respect, he's been through quite a bit on the political level. He's run for the Liberal leadership and premiership twice now. The second time he did worse than the first time. Maybe the others in the Liberal Party are not showing him the love to try and keep him there. Maybe he thinks, he's had his career in politics. It's time to resign and enjoy retirement. I don't know. I'm speculating. But something has caused Mr. Abbott, A, to resign, and B, to say he's not going to run again.
Fair enough. It also reads in the story that he's been in the public eye, not necessarily the public service, for some 45 years. So maybe what you say is exactly why he's decided to do what he's done. Chess, I appreciate your time. Anything else quickly before I have to go?
Well, yeah, I mean, this was a disgraceful election, as everyone will remember. It was a laughingstock. It was one of the most screwed up elections in modern Canadian history. And the government, under the present premier, who is responsible, the minister responsible to fix the act in a number of ways, the government has not acted to fix the act. So I just ask the electorate to keep that in mind, to remember the experience, a rather horrible experience about 4 years ago, and remember that the government hasn't fixed the problem.
Fair enough. The integrity and faith in elections, I've been talking about it on the provincial front and the federal front extensively, because what we see happening before our eyes south of the border is something that we cannot afford to see its full impact in this country. There's a lot of difference between how Elections Canada handles it versus how the individual states in the United States of America handle it. That has been a political upheaval that we cannot afford. So the protection and the integrity of elections is paramount. And whatever has to be done legislatively speaking, and in the way we talk about elections leading into and the results after the fact, is going to really help us differentiate ourselves from the absolute bonkers political landscape in the Americas, in the United States. I appreciate the time,
Well,
Jess.
I agree with all that, and I just ask the electorate to remember that election integrity is vital to democracy, to our way of life, to our freedoms, and to ask them to reflect on the fact that the present government has done nothing to improve it.
All right, so someone just sent me off a resolution of controverted election applications dated June the 11th of 2025 from the Office of the Chief Electoral Officer, talking about changes that have been made. Whether or not that is changes in-house at Elections NL, which they don't have the authority or the ability to change without legislation because they are governed by legislation. So I'll give this a little bit more of a comprehensive read when I get a moment. But I'm off to the break. I appreciate your time.
Sure, that's administrative changes.
It is. Looks like it.
People have the power to make.
Right.
It's not change in the law.
Understood. Thanks, Chess.
Okay, thank you, Patty.
All the best. Bye-bye. All right, let's get in a break. Maggie's in the queue to talk about Brazilian dance group. Fantastic. The Mayor of St. Mary's is Steve Ryan. He's also in the queue to talk about, thankfully, after a couple of decades, that rotten, toxic, stinky old fish sauce plant is going away. And then Michelle Knopfler, we've been exchanging emails. She's a grief and music integrated counselor. She's also in the queue, and they were speaking with you. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Host. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethost.com/terms.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go line number 7. Mike, you're on the air. Hello, Mike. Mike on line 7, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hello. Mike, you're on the air.
Hi, good day.
Good day to you.
How are you?
I'm doing okay, Mike. What's on your mind?
How's Mr. Daly?
That's right. You're speaking with Patty. You're actually live on the air right now. What's on your mind, sir?
Okay, perfect. No, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for all your shows over the years and stuff. And but regarding to your online on air yesterday about the Canada Games and the government talking about what financial support that they're doing and the swag and things like that. I would just like to get a clarification, if I can, regarding that on the comment there, because alluded to, not being a fact that Canada Games are not supporting the players in stuff, and anything over and above that they gave in hoodies and raincoats, stuff like that would be considered an extra swag. I'm sure there was no intent there, but it has been pretty viral in the Canada Games parent community. Maybe misleading of a thought of what the intention of the comment was, but I just want to clarify a couple of things on what the government has not done for our children when it comes to the upcoming Canada Games.
Yeah, which I spoke to this morning. I don't know if you heard what I had to say about it this morning. Did you, Mike?
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay, so what I did add, and you can fill in any gaps that might still be there. So after the show yesterday, I reached out to some folks who are parents of Canada Games kids, who I know because we're all in the sports community, to see exactly what they are not being funded for. And for several organizations and parents that I spoke to, they talked about the extreme lack of support coming from the provincial government, which I mentioned specifically this morning. For instance, uniforms to play are not part of the kit. So a couple of Team NL T-shirts to wear to the music events or to wear at other, at the Athletes Village or stuff, that's all fine and dandy. But no support for uniforms? Like I spoke with someone who's, wants to remain anonymous, even like the baseball team. They got to fundraise to buy 2 sets of uniforms for every kid. And then they got to get specific batting helmets. And they got some corporate support for a bag to carry some bats in and stuff. So they're fundraising over $10,000 worth, whether they can fundraise it or pay out of pocket. And that's just one example. And there's many others that people told me yesterday where the government has come up woefully short here in the year of sport to represent the province at the national games.
Yes, but when it comes to the government supplying or supporting money for uniforms and things like that for the Canada Games, which is any province's Olympics, I mean, any team shouldn't have to be raising $10,000. And the reason why that these jerseys and uniforms are costing so much is because of Canada Games rules and regulations. Mentioned about the swag, about the vintage shirt that we're getting. Our particular team, we did and do have 2 sets of jerseys and stuff like that. But because it doesn't have the Labrador insignia on it, the Newfoundland Labrador, well, then it's not considered proper apparel. So that's why we now have to get a big load of more stuff like that. So, but the yesterday's thing that you had talked about, basically, it just made a lot of people believe that the government was supporting the teams and the jerseys and stuff was above and beyond.
Okay, so the point being?
Well,
Mike, are you still there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, and so the point being, beyond what I said today in this conversation to you about the lack of support, is there anything else that I might be missing? And remember, I lived it. I was the parent of a Canada Games kid. I've done as much fundraising as anybody listening to this program over the course of my adult life, and even as a child, playing sports. So am I missing anything that you'd like to fill in before we say goodbye?
No, sir. Just you've done your clarification. It's all due respect, and I appreciate everything that you've done on the show over the years, and I always did listen and things like that. It just yesterday's comment was maybe mistaken in the wrong direction, but you've obviously clarified in this morning that I didn't hear, and that's just my goal that I was looking for, just a clarification on that, because talk is cheap sometimes, and things get misled. So, I mean, once again, it most certainly seems like you have our support, or we have your support, and that's what matters the most.
Absolutely. And look, when I miss the ball, or when I drop it, or if I leave something out, or if I misspeak, or if I'm just playing wrong, I'm happy to admit it. I just try to get things right. And I'm sure I miss some stuff, and I'm sure I misspeak sometimes, and I'm sure I leave things out. And it's not on purpose. I have no agenda. And when we're talking about amateur sport, I'm all in. I mean, I lived it. I was a parent to it. I support it. I talk about it all the time. So if I wasn't on point yesterday, I'm happy to clarify and get back on track this morning, because it doesn't make me feel bad. I don't feel ashamed or embarrassed if I misspeak or I get something wrong. I just want to get it right. And if that means it has to be the next day, then so be it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. There's it's certainly nothing personal.
No.
It's just that there's been our provincial government has not been supporting in the way that it should be. We're not expecting to get tens of thousands of dollars for every team that's out there. I mean, that would just be a hard ask. But I do know that there's several organizations and sports that are having a hard time getting any support from the government itself. So any talk of the government when it's on open line there, I guess it just hits a nerve. So once again, I thank you and appreciate the things that you've done over the years and for this conversation today. I
appreciate your time, Mike. Enjoy this summer. Good luck at the games.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Everyone in the queue, stay right there. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the Mayor of St. Mary's. That's Steve Ryan. Mayor Ryan, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Best kind. How about you?
Good. Heard you look for a bit of an update on the SAS plant.
Yeah, so what exactly are we talking about? I know the budget alluded to the fact that this would happen, and you got some good support from your MHA. So what exactly is taking place here, and why are we having a consultant involved? I'm a little bit confused with the consultant's role.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to thank you, because you and all the media outlets, we never would have got where we're to without it. This all started with your show, by the way, 3 or 4 probably calls over the past 6 or 8 years. We never would have got there without you. I greatly appreciate it. Where we're to, and plus, I'd like to thank my council. They stood behind us, everything I'd done. Even when it wasn't nice, we had to take ownership of that facility to make this happen. And that was a big sell. That's a big responsibility for the 5 of us to take ownership of a disaster zone. And the council had faith in me in my dealings with the government, and we decided on a vote, and we took ownership. And if you just are MHA, we have the best MHA. She's after going out on a limb for us with this project and with other projects here in the community. And I have to mention the past Premier, Mr. Fury. Mr. Fury, me and him had, I think, 3 conversations. And at the last one, he said to me, don't forget the SAS plant. And I said, I won't. But the government is after helping us in every way, especially the Department of Environment. And when we need a consultant, it is because this is above our head. We don't really know what we're at with this. So we go and put out a tender. We need somebody to watch what's being done in the project. We're only, like I said, volunteers. I think 3 retirees on my council. We can't overlook the project. So the government is working with us now first to go out and get this consultant, and we have some interested parties, and they're going to work with us up to that point, and then the consultant is going to take over looking after the project for the town. For the towns, really, because it's not just us. It's going to be the town of Sunnyside, too, where this product is going. So we're going to be removed from one town and brought into their approved site to be disposed of properly. So this consultant will overlook this. The department is already after upfronting some money for the consultant. Thereafter, this will never happen without this provincial government, and each department, from Minister Davis to the past ones that we're after dealing with, and to Mr. Hogan, the Premier this time, make sure that they did go into the budget and follow through on their commitment to have this done. It was a lot of times in between that we're getting worried, there's change of ministers, but we followed through on everything, and Mr. Sims there in the environmental department was a big help to me also. Somebody who was no help to us is the federal government. This is federal government's money gone wrong. They washed their hands out of us. I'm after hearing our town be mentioned a few times with windmills. I'm telling any towns they're dealing with I don't know much about the windmills, but make sure you have some kind of a backup plan, some bonds in place, which I think they do, just in case something happens like this, they pull out and it's not left on a small town of 300 people to do $1 million cleanup. Definitely look after yourselves.
And I mean, at this point, it wasn't about dealing with it because of the smell and what have you. That was about to collapse into the ocean. I mean, it wouldn't be long down the road. You know, one decent storm and that thing could be absolutely gone, and in its entirety and in the bay. So that, and I'll remind the listeners about the federal government's role here. So not only is the federal government money gone bad, but when they tested the effluent back in 2016 and found out it was killing the fish, and they didn't tell the community, that's a betrayal. Like, I don't know how other way to put it. That is absolutely ridiculous. They knew what we were dealing with in St. Mary's, and yet they didn't even give us the heads up based on their actual scientific testing. So that has always driven me nuts. So is it the fact that...
It's crazy. They did hide it on us.
Yeah.
And the only reason we found out is from the Freedom of Information. And all they done was delay us. We went through different departments writing letters they passed us from the Environmental Department and the Infrastructure Department, passed us around. The Minister of Environment actually said, this is not environmental. Like I said, come down, come inside, have a sandwich and a cup of coffee. If you think this is not environmental, running that into the beach, into the ocean, I'm like, man, you're representing the country, and you think this is not, like I said, it's after having a lot of roadblocks, but we're not over the finish line. There's a bit of work to be done with this, but it could be done. We have a time frame. Hopefully it'll be gone by the end of August. And this is a big win for our team. And then the town owns their property. The building is going to be no good. It's going to have to be demolished. But we're hoping we have foresee another business on that property, and which is a win-win too for everybody, the town, the government, everybody.
I mean, for someone to say that this is not an environmental issue, I'm not an environmental scientist, but if something is pouring into the ocean that's killing the fish, maybe, just maybe, that's an environmental issue.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, Penny, again, thank you again for being there and all the media outlets. After doing interviews in Ireland, New York City, I have Radio Canada coming for 10:30 for an interview. I give back to the media because the media gives us a platform to get out there and tell these stories. So on that note, I have two more small ones here. Penny, you touched on Eastern Waste there when you were starting your show. Eastern Waste, we're having some trouble up here too with Eastern Waste, big time. We're having a meeting this evening. Our MHA rounded up some representatives from Eastern Waste at 6:30 in the town hall to answer some questions and to give them your concerns. Our garbage collection is the biggest part of our cost now running our town, which I don't think it should be there because we have other priorities like water, sewer, roads, our garbage collection should not be the biggest draw on 307 residents' tax base. It should fit in there, yes, but not be the biggest draw. We had a previous contractor that was here, and we were paying $180 per household per year. And that contractor retired, so we were bumped over, and we had no choice. We had to go with Eastern Waste. Right off, we went up to $225 per household. So out of this, we were dealing with those access cards, was just a nightmare. That was a nightmare. They weren't ready for it. They listened, yes, give them credit, they listened, they put an extension on. They have very poor communication with the towns. And we lost our bulk garbage. Rural Newfoundland bulk garbage is a big thing. We have seniors here, most of them don't have a car, let alone a truck. So how do you go to get their garbage to the landfill? So we went from 2 bulk garbages with a $180 fee to 1 bulk garbage. Now the 1 bulk garbage has gone to by appointment only. And right here, and the communication, I say again, wasn't there because people have their bulk garbage out now, and it was only a last minute. We were told the bulk garbage is not going to happen now until October. So we have Chesterfield sets out and washers and dryers, and coming on tour season, it's just an eyesore. The Eastern Waste Management, under their mandate, is to keep our province clean, and they're taking a step back on that. Eastern Waste is becoming a business. It's not about the environment and keeping clean now. I think Eastern Waste is more at the bottom line as a dollar sign.
Yeah, I mean, and even with the effort to streamline services with access cards and stuff, I mean, I get the modernization of service, but modernizing databases should not include eliminating bulk pickup that you've experienced over the years. Like, I don't know what's going on there, but we'll see if we can get Mr. Tessier on to talk about exactly these concerns.
Yeah, he's coming this evening, I think, for the meeting with us, the public, actually. So I asked anybody with any concerns to come out. Petty, I have one more, and I think this is the biggest one. It's an upcoming issue. And there a couple of weeks ago, I listened to the union leader on talking about crab being shipped off to Ireland. Yeah. She was talking on the level of the processors shipping off crab. But my issue is with any crab being shipped off to Ireland. I know the union is in a bind. They're walking the fence because they're supporting the fishermen, and they have workers in the plants that are paying union dues too. They need to take a position on it. Where's it going to be? Are we totally against this crab going off? And I'd like to know, how can you answer to the workers in those plants if you're okay with crab going off? Me as mayor in a small town, we just got a new processing facility. We got a new license. We have our cap lifted, thanks to the province, thanks to the minister, thanks to the premier. And now the shipping off crab is starting to hurt us. I say shipping off crab. We're not shipping off crab. We're shipping off jobs. What we're shipping off now is jobs. This decision was decided because it was, the protests. We all know what happened. And I think it could have been rushed into a little bit. Since then, more licenses have been issued. Caps lifted. We were able to do however much crab we're able to round up. And from what I understand, Minister Byrne, the previous minister, announced there's another couple of licenses coming. So right now, the plants are not at full capacity. 90% of them are not. This is the first time I talk to fishermen every day. They come in through my door here, my business, and it's the first time that a lot of them never got held up this year to go out, to just go and come back with their trips. There's no boats tied up. So it's a sign that the plants are not at full capacity. It's definitely not. That's one big sign of it. I stood beside the fishermen, me and my whole family, for 2 days in Confederation Building, and we supported them. I hope they could get $20 a pound, but I'm asking, I'm pleading also to think about small towns in this picture. Just a rough number, and this is rough. I know some people will probably argue with it, but 100,000 pound of crab to a fisherman, to an enterprise this year, just roughly is worth $500,000.
Yep.
To a deckhand on that boat is getting 5%. That's $5,000. That same 100,000 pound of crab to a plant worker is worth between $150 and $200. So for every 100,000 pound of crab being shipped off this island, we're losing 10 hours of EI eligible to those people that badly need it. And I'm not just saying just to scrape your hours. Scraping your hours is no good no more. You need a little bit more than just because you have to get by in the winter and the cost of living is gone. Well, we all know should have rough.
That's right.
So the shipping off crab got to somehow something got to happen with it. And right now it's not for all the fishermen. I talked to most fishermen here, and they're not for it. Most fishermen have brothers, sisters, mothers, neighbors working in the plant, and they want to see them do well.
Of course they do. And Steve, I got to jump in because I'm late for the news, but I'm surprised the government hasn't spoken into this issue. We'll see if we can't get comment, but I'm glad what's happened to the fish sauce plant, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, just want to finish one good one. A good government can reverse a bad decision. You see with the sugar tax, the carbon tax, and let's keep for whoever's coming in September, I asked them to make a commitment, not to, you could just cancel for 1 year and do a little bit of a study on it and see where we're to. If we're at full capacity, yes, I have no problem. But Petty, yes, I'd like to see more government come out on this and give their take on it, which way it is for or not. But this is all about rural Newfoundland. The plant worker, estimated about 10,000 workers. That is rural Newfoundland, and we have right here in St. Mary's, we have a success story right now with what we have in plant, a new model, and we don't want to lose anything out of that. And I'm willing to fight when anybody else wants to fight for this. Fought with fishermen, and I'll represent any plant worker and fight for any plant worker to keep every hour that we can in those plants and rural Newfoundland.
Appreciate the time, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
All the best. Bye-bye. Bye. Steve Ryan, the Mayor of St. Mary's. Time for the news. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Maggie, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing great. How about you?
Not too bad at all. I'm calling about maybe some information either you or the listening audience might be able to help me with. I have a really close friend who's coming to visit me the end of this month for a vacation. He's a professional dancer from Brazil. He started his group about, 8, maybe 10 years ago, quite a while ago. It's a combination of dance plus fitness. I suggested to him while he was here for a visit to maybe reach out to whomever we can, because I would like for them to come here for a concert because he was really fascinated with Newfoundland. So I'm just wondering if there's anybody who could point me in the right direction, the right channels to go through. He doesn't know I'm doing this, by the way.
Okay, so what exactly are you hoping to find?
To find maybe who I could talk to get these guys to come to Newfoundland and do a concert.
Okay. So, well, there's the Department of Tourism at the provincial government level. There's actually a group called Dance NL. They represent the world of dance here in the province as well, so they might be helpful. They've just said to me Fabian James is a fellow who is a promoter, and he might be interested in something like this. So there's 3 options. I'd start with the provincial government at tourism. Then I'd go to Dance NL, and then I'd find...
You're going a bit too fast for me, Patty.
Okay.
Start with the provincial tourism?
Yeah, the Department of Tourism. And they have also, in that world is culture, so that might fall into that envelope. Then I'd reach out to Dance NL, and that's an easy website. It's just dancenl.ca.
Okay.
And finally, try to find a promoter. In this case, maybe someone like Fabian James, who may indeed be interested.
He's an actual promoter, right?
He is, yeah.
Okay.
So those 3 might help.
Sounds good. That sounds good, Patty. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Good luck. Let me know how it works out.
I certainly will.
Okay, thanks, Maggie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Dave took that one quick. Let's go to line number 3. Todd Churchill, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
Not too bad, I suppose. How about you?
Not too bad. I'm calling about a story that VOCM covered last week, and this had to do with the defamation of my wife by the Newfoundland and Labrador Association of the Deaf and the Canadian Association of the Deaf. Just to give your listeners a reminder about that, they didn't see the article. Over the course of 2019 and 2020, the Newfoundland and Labrador Association of the Deaf wrote 4 letters defaming my wife, saying very extreme things about her to the very people that at the time we were fighting a human rights complaint against for our son Carter. So not only were they not helping us, they were actually actively undermining us. And we found out about this defamation as we were doing research for Carter's case. We were doing a lot of ATIPing, so we found out that accidentally that they were doing this and had engaged the Canadian Association of the Deaf to bolster the defamatory comments about my wife. So following VOCM's story, NLAD has come out with a statement saying this is not representative of who we are. Well, I dispute that, because if you say something wrong once, that, maybe it was a slip of a tongue, it was a lapse of judgment perhaps, but if you do something repeatedly over several months, I'm sorry, that is representative of who you are. If you take it upon yourself to engage another deaf association to bolster the false claims that you've now admitted are false, that is who you are. So I think there's been no ownership by NLAD here. And I think the board really needs to take some ownership and some control of their staff, because I just don't think Mollis Murphy and Renee Fairhealy should be employed by the Newfoundland and Labrador Newfoundland and Labrador Association of the Deaf any longer. And if people would like to see the apologies by these 2 deaf associations, they can go to Deaf Children Matter, where I have both letters posted, and people can see the actually appalling things they were saying about my wife. We've had a lot of people reach out to us on social media saying they cannot believe that a mother who was fighting so hard for her deaf child could have these things said about her by 2 organizations that should have been 1,000,000% in her corner, but were actually undermining her. And it even goes beyond this, because there's a steering committee on deaf and hard of hearing education. It was founded in October of 2019. We lobbied to be appointed as parent representatives for over a year, had a lot of no's from the department, finally had approval to get this position created. And what happened? Then Deputy Minister Bob Gardner reaches out to NLAD to appoint the parent representative. He knew full well of the animosity they had toward my wife and I, because he was getting a copy of these defamatory letters. So the department never wanted Todd and Kim Churchill to be on this steering committee. So they knew once they asked NLAD to appoint a parent, it would never be Todd and Kim, never. And sure enough, it was not. The parent, and I ask you to rationalize this one to me, the parent appointed by NLAD does not have a deaf child and is an employee of the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District, I guess NL Schools now. So how can that parent possibly speak intelligently on deaf education without having a deaf child? And secondly, that is a brutal conflict of interest if you were an employee of the district. And how are you supposed to advocate against your employer? So I'd ask you to chime in on that one.
Well, I'm not sure what to say to it. I have read the letters of apology. I don't think anybody's been relieved of their duties at either organization. And just as a starting point, I have no earthly idea what they thought they were trying to achieve with the way they spoke about your wife. Like, you were advocating for a deaf child to be provided American Sign Language in school. It felt like you were advocating for the entirety of the deaf community, or the deaf and hard of hearing community. So I'm completely confused as to why they thought anything other than the fact that you folks were advocates doing the same type of work they're doing. Like, I just don't understand the starting point.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, if they spent 1/10 of the effort defending deaf education rights of deaf children like my son, as they spend trying to destroy the reputation of my wife perhaps two hearing people would not have had to go to a board of inquiry to do the work that they say they do. Because to the best of my knowledge, and perhaps somebody from NLD can call in or text you to advise differently, I'm not aware they've ever engaged a human rights process to defend the rights of deaf children in our province. I think pretty much everybody in Newfoundland and Labrador knows Todd and Kim Churchill have done it. We did it over 5 years and finally got some measure of justice for deaf children, some recognition of what's being done to deaf children. It wasn't NLED, it was two hearing parents. So I think, to be honest with you, if NLED doesn't want to help us, fine. Step aside and just do nothing. Because doing nothing when we were fighting for our son would have been better than undermining us. And I have to make another point to address this comment about this is not who we are. Another deaf association in mainland Canada called the Canadian Deaf Grassroots Movement, they went public last week and said Miles Murphy had contacted them when we were fighting our human rights complaint. We had a GoFundMe account set up to help raise funds for the enormous legal costs of defending Carter's rights. And this deaf association had shared a post on their social media helping us to fundraise. Miles Murphy took it upon himself to contact his deaf association and ask them to take the post down. I mean, if that's not who you are, I mean, again, from 2 years of defamation over several months to contacting a deaf group to try to sabotage our efforts to fundraise for our deaf son's legal fees, to preventing us from being on a steering committee, even if it meant appointing a parent who could not speak intelligently about deaf children because they do not have one. If all these things don't define who you are and represent who you are, I mean, I'm not sure what is. This is an habitual thing. And I think the board of NLED needs to take strong action. And quite frankly, if the board won't do it, I think the government needs to do it, because NLED receives hundreds of thousands of dollars of funding from the government. And I think the government should be extremely concerned how a nonprofit is behaving in this manner.
It's all so strange and completely unnecessary and entirely mean-spirited. And just on a personal note, I have no idea how I ended up in this conversation either. So, when I get a chance to speak with someone, if and when that happens, I'll have to ask questions about that too, because I've been plunged into the middle of some of these back and forths over the years, and I have no earthly idea why, because I'm not involved. Other than having conversations with you and Kim over the years about Carter, I don't know how I ended up in this either. And I'm not going to, elaborate too far on that, but everything about this is completely unnecessary. And I mean, to hear you saying things like, how difficult it is to watch your wife cry herself to sleep every night because of this is heartbreaking, because it just came out of nowhere. And you'll know more about it than I do, but it's a head scratcher, and I feel terrible for you and Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'll speak directly to every mother listening to your show right now. Just think about how you would feel as a mother to be fighting for your deaf child's rights and have two organizations that should have supported you beating you down behind the scenes. They didn't even do it to our face. It was like a betrayal. It was like a knife in the back. They went behind our back. They didn't contact us. They just went behind our back. And it's only through serendipity that we actually learned about these letters. And I guess that's what they assumed, that we would never find out about these letters. And, of course, once we did find out about the letters, we asked for an apology and a complete retraction. And the first response from both associations, the Newfoundland and Labrador Association of the Deaf and the Canadian Association of the Deaf, was to double down on the false claims. So I'm sorry. If this is not who you are, then you would have acknowledged that what you did was wrong and said, oh, I'm so sorry, this is not who we are, we apologize. But it was never. We were forced to open litigation against two associations, CAD in May of 21, and NLED in January of 22. And this was at the same time we were fighting a human rights complaint, and we had so much support from the general public, and people had some sympathy for what we were being put through. And, your listeners will be reminded that the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District spent almost $750,000 of taxpayer money trying to beat us down until we gave up. And while we were dealing with all of that, we had these two associations beating us down behind the scenes. Associations that really should have been in our corner, but were undermining us. And I'm sorry if these two individuals, Miles Murphy, the executive director, and Renee Fairhealy, the wellness program director, are not removed. I'm sorry. That is who NLAD is, because they're willing to accept this egregious behavior, and multiple examples of it, from trying to sabotage our fundraising efforts for Carter's human rights case, to preventing us from being on the steering committee, from defamation of my wife. I'm sorry, this is habitual.
Todd, I understand the concern, and of course, either the aforementioned representatives of NLAD are welcome to come on the program and speak to what you have to say and what they have done over the course of this last 4 or 5 years. Todd, I do have to get going, but I appreciate your time.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. We have written to Minister Bernie Davis, formally requesting to finally be appointed to the steering committee if the government is serious about deaf education, and to have Miles Murphy and Renee Fairhealy removed immediately from the steering committee, because clearly they should not be on it given their actions.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's get to the break. When we come back, Alison Coffin is in the queue. Of course, Alison Coffin lost to John Abbott in the 2021 election by 53 votes. And, of course, we know that Mr. Abbott has now decided to resign. So, vindication or victory? We'll let Alison Coffin tell us how she feels about this right after the break. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Alison Coffin, you're on the air.
Well, good morning, Paddy Daly. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thank you. How about you?
Pretty fine over in this corner, I must say. Was calling to have a little chat about this absolutely fabulous settlement that we've had in the election case. I've heard some of the conversation, and unfortunately I only have a couple of minutes. There are obviously some massive implications for politics and elections and the province in this. But maybe a quick chat about, what actually happened and who benefited from this. So I think I kind of want to refocus how we're thinking about this. This is a real win for Weimar Whitby. And Weimar Whitby is the gentleman who was my co-applicant on this case, and he was just trying to get a ballot. And finally, we have Elections Newfoundland and Labrador admitting that there were errors in the administration of the election and that Weimar Whitby should indeed have gotten a ballot. And he represents every single individual that also didn't get a ballot, and we listed quite a number in our application to the court. And everybody in Newfoundland and Labrador who was frustrated with that election, whether they tried to get a ballot and couldn't, or they got locked out of a website, or they just couldn't get someone to pick up the phone, or they just thought it was ridiculous in any number of different ways. So this is a real win for democracy in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I think that's really important. And there were 3 key decisions from that. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Sure. I understand, and I talk about the integrity of elections a lot here on this program because I know it's important. But this is not to be dismissive of anything you just said, but when we talk about a win for your co-applicant, what exactly has been won? Because if we're talking about legislative changes to ensure that special ballot handling is done more appropriately, and into the future trying to put forward provisions to deal with things that might interrupt elections, whether it be pandemic related or natural disaster, or who knows what might happen. So, and again, not to be crass, what has been won by the voter?
What has been won is a recognition by Elections Newfoundland and Labrador that errors were committed, and they have implemented new processes. They have also committed to working with everybody involved, including myself and Weimar and all of the legal teams, to improve the processes. And so a number of things were identified that I'm sure can be improved, and I'm going to initiate those discussions if we can further that. So we have these internal processes that are going to get better. That's going to improve the integrity of the election system. And we're going to get more people engaged in the system. And they know that, if we can make a difference when we stand up to this, and these changes are happening, and there's a recognition that something went wrong. So that's a real important win. The other win is in making sure that there is a full and fair and open process to vote and to run. So the vacating of the seat was necessary to ensure that anyone who goes back into this process is not going in against an incumbent that was there under questionable processes. So everyone going into a by-election in this set of circumstances, any candidate that wants to do that, myself, John Abbott again, another Conservative candidate, an independent candidate, anyone at all, knows that this is a fair and open process. And then, of course, an apology to Weimar Whitby. This man should have voted, and this is vital in recognizing that what was done and that the perseverance of Weimar, myself, and our entire legal team. So those are the tangible things, and I think this is a real beginning of a change in the process. Yes, there needs to be legislative change. Hopefully, in whenever the next election happens and we have a new House of Assembly, they'll reconsider a new Democratic Reform Committee, and I will guarantee you I have some very good recommendations for that. And I think this process is really going to hopefully initiate, I say, a new era of democracy in Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, Patty, I have something I need to be to rather quickly. I think this is a huge conversation. I would like to have a more in-depth discussion of all of these things. So perhaps I'll call you back again soon and we can get into this in a little more detail because there's lots to talk about.
Sure. Very, very quickly. This has been a long legal process. Did the party itself, the NDP, help pay legal bills, or is this all out of pocket for you, or how's that handled? Because having a lawyer is an expensive exercise.
Absolutely. Without getting any details, because, again, there's a lot to go into there, but a lot of people contributed an awful lot. Myself, Weimar, several lawyers, lots and lots was in kind, lots and lots of contributions. And we had fundraising and donations and lots of support from lots and lots of different places.
I appreciate the time. Stay in touch, Alison.
Absolutely, will do, Patty. Have a great day. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so we're going to take a break, get back on track here. Dana's in the queue to talk about the Driftwood Inn fire. The investigation into what happened there, all the circumstances regarding how it started, and the fire suppression services that apparently were not in place. And, of course, the man is dead. Dana wants to talk about the Driftwood Inn fire. Then Miles Russell is going to announce his intentions to run. Where? We'll find out. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Dana. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I had some good news. Someone told me to share it online, so I'm sharing it online. There's some really good news about some activities happening here in St. John's regarding a new engine, a revolutionary new engine. It doesn't require a base pan. It doesn't require liters of oil. It runs, the lubrication is synthetic oil like you would have in sealed bearings. Synthetic oil is a lot better than petroleum oil, but it's impossible to manufacture at such a level that everyone could have it. So we have to concentrate on fossil fuel. But synthetic oil is much more efficient than petroleum oil.
Synthetic oil
what's in sealed bearings, right?
Yes, hold on a second. Synthetic oil has long been a thing. So what's this new engine? What are we talking about?
The new engine doesn't require petroleum oil. It runs on synthetic oil.
Okay, where is this?
It's being developed here in St. John's. As far as I know, I was told to share this, right? So the new engine is going to be, it's called a rotary. It's called a rotary engine. And the concept is very basic. It's a very basic, and it's been developed, and as has been told to me, that it requires some seals, right? It requires more seals than an internal combustion engine. The design of it seems to suggest that it won't work, but it works like a charm. It's been running here in St. John's for over 20 years, a prototype car. So the world has a new rotary engine. The concept is very simple. If I was to say to you it's an engine with no moving parts, that wouldn't exactly be true. But compared to an internal combustion engine, there are no moving parts. Really,
there are fewer. There's no such thing as no moving parts. But a rotary engine is pretty much a precursor to what we now know as the internal combustion engine. So that's as old.
No.
It is.
Well, yes, right. You're right, Patty. It is an internal combustion engine, but it's a completely different concept. It runs differently. The idea for the engine is so simple that it's just so simple. I mean, when Henry Ford developed the internal combustion engine, it was like, wow, we got movement. We're going to go faster than a horse or the iron horse, you know. So this new rotary engine, I was told to share it, so I'm sharing it. It's being developed, and for every engine that's on every human on planet Earth, I'm going to get $1. I was told to share it online.
Well, thanks for doing it.
And it's going to be in full support of the Shriners Hospitals for Sick Children. That's going to be one of the major. They're going to be supported by the industry that develops this new engine, the Shriners Hospital for Sick Kids.
Fair enough. Appreciate the time, Dana. Thanks for the call.
Oh, no. What about Driftwood?
Okay, quickly, let's get into that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I grew up in there. Like, I know the Drift. I mean, ever since I can remember, the Driftwood doors have been open for business there, right? George, St. George's, Mr. George, Mr. St. George. He used to be there every day at his table there in the lobby with his cup of tea and his newspaper. I even sat down with one time, a long time ago when I was just a kid. And that was St. George's Hotel, the Driftwood Inn now. So, as I understand it, it seems to be common knowledge, there were no sprinkler systems and no fire alarms in the entire building. And there were two teams of volleyball kids at night asleep in the building. So, I mean, who owned that building?
Well, that's a question.
In my town.
I don't know, is the short answer.
So I heard something. I shouldn't say it because I can't prove it, right?
Then probably shouldn't say it.
Yeah, but you would be surprised who owns that building, because I know who owns that building. And if everybody really knew who owned that building, I mean, somebody's held responsible. Somebody's going to prison for criminal negligence causing death to an American hunter.
We don't know that yet.
Well, I mean, someone is criminally negligent. And the one who owns the building is criminally negligent. So he's got to pay for that. He's got to answer for that.
Well, let's see what the investigation concludes, Dana. Appreciate the time. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Take care.
Yeah. Okay. Just you wonder who owns that building.
Yes, a question that I've asked many times.
Okay, so there's your rotary engine coming up, Patty.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye. Synthetic oil has a petroleum base, but it's not like regular oil. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Second over to Cindy Holden, a registered dental hygienist and a member of the NLHDA, which is the Newfoundland and Labrador Dental Hygienists Association. And good morning, Cindy. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty and listeners. How are you?
I'm doing fine this morning. How about you?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for reaching out on this, on our dear old sugar tax.
Which, of course, has now gone by the wayside. Come July the 1st, the retailers will no longer have to charge that tax. There are some questions about how that's going to work, but that's not really what we're talking about this morning. I've heard from people in your field, and they're bemoaning the fact it's gone away. So why?
You know, hey, let's just say added sugar has now become a critical health issue for us as a population throughout the world, actually. It really became paramount. I've been at this practice for quite some time, and, you know, to be clear, the damage, you see it. You see it in private practice. I see it in public practice. But, early childhood cavities, we would say, it's a global epidemic. I can share some numbers with you now in a second. But, and you guys know our diabetes rates are the high in Newfoundland and Labrador, are the highest in the country. So, sugar is impacting that. And, some of us might look away, oh my God, there's this, there's that, everything in moderation. But, when there's sugar being added to certain foods and processing, that's not in moderation. Just case in point, a diabetes educator pointed out to me last week, we were looking at a jug of orange juice, not from concentrate, and it was a no-name type, not the no-name brand, but not one of the popular brands. And she showed me how to calculate how many teaspoons of sugar were in an average 1 cup size. And it was just over 6 teaspoons. And I don't think many of us would actually drink a cup of water with that much sugar in it. So it's really a fascinating issue and a critical health issue. So this sugar tax, when it came out a couple of years ago, some of us in the health industry were absolutely enthralled with it. Like, wow, that's really progressive, But of course, we weren't realizing, a lot of the commentary in the public arena was, it's a tax grab. It's money. Well, we are buying a lot of processed food, and I guess if we could tax some of it, it was going to get us some extra money in the provincial government coffers. Great. That was used to fund certain health programs, and we thought even that was fabulous. But we really have to start to look upstream a little bit. Is it really our goal to keep on this track of higher and higher disease rates? I just sort of flipped that idea of the early childhood carriers. We have quite a number of children going to the operating room to get just what we would call standard regular dental treatment. It's just that they're so young before they get to kindergarten. I can give you a dollar amount on that, not specifically for Newfoundland and Labrador, but a national study came out about just over 10 years ago that it was like something in the range of $21 million was spent on that. Now, that's not big money in this day and age to a certain extent, but that only was the hospital cost. It did not include the health practitioners, the physicians, the anesthesiologists, and it didn't include the travel time for some people to get to that service. So we're really, and even though that's 10 years old, and I may not use that in any kind of a report as such, but most of us in the industry can tell you that number has not gone down. So when I wrote you that little blurb a few weeks ago, it's a shame we're taking it out. It really required some education around it. I know, people who consume these things, we all love our sugar. It's not that we're going to bar it all together, but there's a time and a place, and it's the education around it that we need to support.
I think there's kind of two different things. Education and awareness. Like if everybody knew that inside a 355 milliliter can of Red Bull there's like 37 grams of sugar, then maybe that would open up some eyes. But for me, policy that works is great. Education, awareness campaigns that work, great. But the sugar tax, even by the government's own estimations, didn't seem to work. They weren't the retailers weren't selling a whole lot less sugary drinks. It was applied incorrectly to a variety of products. Even the government's estimate about how much money would come in the door year one, they were thinking maybe 9 million, but almost 12 million came in. So it didn't really look like it was having the impact that people like yourself would hope it would have. Your thoughts?
Yeah, exactly right, Patty. They really need to be timed. I know some of me in our organization, there was a campaign a few years ago, Rethink Your Drink. A number of jurisdictions used it, so I don't think I'm prying on anybody's branding there. But and it was a little bit of an eye opener, and it was a collaborative sort of. A campaign, the dental hygienists, the dentists, there were various health organizations and other provincial jurisdictions were sort of in on the same thing. But, these kind of changes, like of this magnitude, really need to be multi-level. So you'd have something like that tax being introduced, you would make, sort of an educational, one-on-one education, but you want to really do a whole population education around this. Because we've known this for a while, but you can still sort of say to people, give them that information, like, wow, really, that much, So, and then on top of that, Patty, you really need like we did a little bit of evaluation, bits and pieces, but you really need a comprehensive evaluation. You'd want to, sort of at the consumer level, at the government level, at the retailers level. I'm getting a little bit out of my range. I'm not a policy person as such. I do a fair bit, but it's generally a multi-level thing, and it has to have time. Forgive me, I don't know when did we introduce that? Was it 2022? But it really needs, I think the average program like that, and especially if it has that much, when I'm talking multi-level and comprehensive, you generally look at a minimum of 4 years, and you'd almost want to plan your evaluation when you release the program, actually, not a year. Like, some of the little bit of evaluation that's gone on now, I don't think it happened when it started. I think it was a program that was sort of lifted from another jurisdiction and applied. Does that help you at all? It's not a quick fix answer. No. And it won't help some of our listeners necessarily, but it does require a bit of time. In fairness to the government, I think they got some, like you said, the amount of money they anticipated was set, and then they got more. It's great. And they were able to, I would say, fund some of the glucometer programming that we needed so badly. So that's great. But for us in the health promotion business, we really want to see some funding and some interest thrown back on the upstream, and I think that was what I wanted to write to you guys to say, that's a shame. I mean, we pull back the bus, great. But I think we want to see, if next time a program is released, like, we'd want it sort of a heads up. And there's a fair bit of collaboration that can happen in our health practitioners, because we've certainly known of each other, but to work extensively, collaboratively like this, and to help out these programs would be ideal.
Yeah, I looked around when this was first introduced, and there's other examples where it did not work. Not based on my just assessment of things, but actual sales, retail numbers. It didn't really change the water on the beans necessarily. But in other places where they've taken a national approach, things like not talking about the consumer, we can talk about awareness campaigns and to understand the relationship between your dental health and your overall health and the cost and all those things. But when the manufacturers were forced to either pay an additional surcharge if they did not oblige the government's want for less sugar in their product to begin with. So that makes sense to me. If I am going to continue to buy one product or another, but all of a sudden down the road it has less sugar because the manufacturers were told there's an additional fee to not abide by, whether it be a Health Canada restriction or whatever the case may be, then we're just consuming less sugar, which is the intended goal. But the way it was constructed here, I don't know if 4 years would have made a difference, and that's a fair point to make, but people just bought what they always bought.
Exactly right. Yeah. And when the program was released, as much as we're like, wow, some of us were going around asking, okay, what else? How else? Who's going to assess this? How is it going to be assessed? Because you're absolutely right, Patty. You buy your juice, you buy your Pepsi, you buy, whichever brand you buy. Yes, you might sort of kind of, wince at the fact that it's taxed more. But I think we went through that too with our, buying, what am I trying to say? The recycling, the deposit on the bottles. I think everybody was a little crazy about that, but we've gotten over it because we know how important that is, and look how long that's been. But I would love to see and come together with our education programs. And now we have, the Education NL Accord. I hope I'm saying that right. We had our, Newfoundland Health Accord. And I would say in those documents, certainly the Health Accord I'm a little bit more familiar with, there was certainly interjurisdictional or multi-level policy, health and all policies, the social determinants of health. That's not about just retailers and government. It's about, acknowledging everybody. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do. But maybe this sugar tax, like getting it gone, is going to, because a few of us were scrambling at the end of that from other, from various sectors, and saying, "Gosh, it's a shame," blah 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 blah. But maybe it'll take something else like this to sort of say, wait a minute, maybe we should do something a little differently. Because it's certainly in our health court, like that we are planning. We wanted to introduce more health education and health promotion. One of our action items is playing greater emphasis on health promotion and well-being. And I think, we have to start looking upstream for some of these conditions, not just at the retail shelf. And some of us in health have already sort of been in this demise that, we can't compete anymore with retail marketing. If I use oral health just as an example, I mean, how many times we can talk about the best way to brush your teeth and talk about all the little intricacies about oral health care, and somebody will look at it sort of, point blank, what about all the tooth whiteners? And, having a beautiful smile is important. There's no doubt about that. It's great for well-being. But that wasn't the point of the conversation. There's elements of oral health care that may have to come ahead of that. You
Sure.
have to have healthy teeth to whiten them, if you know what I mean. So,
I do.
So
I have to get to the news, but maybe at another day we'll talk about actual dental care while it being admitted to hospital, because that was an interesting point someone made, that maybe we should implement that strategy while for folks who are admitted, because you might not think about it, but then that could further exacerbate overall health outcomes if all of a sudden you've got the unattended to teeth and gums, I would suggest.
Absolutely. And 9 chances out of 10, I know you're going off now, but 9 chances out of 10 people are coming in with inadequate oral health care, which is overwhelming as well. Sure, that's great.
Appreciate your time, Cindy. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Cindy Holden is a registered dental hygienist. When we come back after the news, Miles Russell is going to talk about his upcoming candidacy. Then we're talking road construction. Terry wants to talk about healthcare. Bill's in the queue to talk about Mr. Abbott's resignation. And then you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Miles Russell. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Man, what a day.
'Tis that. Can't wait to get out in it.
And it's been a great year so far, I guess, if you like hiking. It seemed like a pretty nice year. So, Patty, I'm calling about the upcoming City of St. John's municipal election taking place many months from now. October 2nd is the final day, but it's a beautiful summer to get out knocking on doors, and I'm hopped on with you. Just did the announcements online, so I'm officially declaring my candidacy for Ward 1, which is the east end, essentially, of St. John's.
Yeah, it's my ward. So you and I have spoken in the past, and I understand your professional background. So whether we talk about things like the way we design and build roads and traffic flow and the like, so what are you going to be talking about on the campaign trail?
Those are big topics, but I mean, in all reality, a lot of people have issues with the obvious housing affordability crisis. Just in the last 5 years, St. John's population is up another 6,000 people. We should see that in the new 2025 census if it comes out later this year. And we have not built that home. So we're obviously in a lot of stress municipally, even the whole region, for housing. A lot of people seeing in our renters markets where people are waiting with 80, 90 people for a single, a one-bedroom basement apartment. We also have a lot of, road safety issues. Last year was sadly the most lethal year in St. John's history. There was 8 road fatalities, and this year is hopefully not going to get worse. We had some pretty bad tragedies so far, so road safety. And then the East End is in generally pretty disconnected from St. John's. It's got pretty poor transit connectivity. The master cycle plan not going to connect to the rest of the majority network for multiple years now at the current rate they're going. But all these things can change, and we can do it affordably and quickly, and I want to talk to people about that.
Well, how can we do it affordably and quickly?
So the biggest thing we have an abundance of on the East End is space for cars. And I keep beating this drum because it's the easiest one. We have extra wide roads, a lot of capacity on the streets. We have essentially the East End's commercial function has more or less dwindled quite significantly. We had Converges/PC on the East End in the Fall River Plaza. That's been gone for, almost a decade now. Costco is now being converted to a health center. A lot of buildings up there are just general box stores, and they're not really meeting their function. So there's a lot of ample parking space. We have a nice corridor, a wide corridor that can be used for a new, we could have a better transit corridor and active transit corridor on Torbay Road. So we have a lot of options to expand. and, do it in a way that doesn't impact a lot of people's housing and that. Like, say, the main quarters, you're seeing something like, say, Chancellor's Park, very good project. Eskasoni is currently getting redeveloped. Hoyle's building is currently in demolition. So, like, there's opportunity here, and I just want to show people that, like, if we build correctly and quickly, we can really connect Ward 1, also really help St. John's in general address a housing issue. And, again, like, there's a lot we can do to make Ward 1 a place that's already great for families, but we can do much better.
Yeah, no doubt. And on the housing front, municipalities obviously play an active role here, whether it be with timeline for approvals, municipal development fees, and the like. But a lot of the funding is going to come from elsewhere. If we talk about the federal government, Build Canada First, and some provincial monies that are available as well. But what specifically should the municipalities do, or pardon me, the City of St. John's do, in an effort to build what we need?
So, and that's a good question. Like, these programs, federal and provincial housing programs, they all are fantastic. I don't want to dismiss the programs, but there's a single problem, and we're seeing it across the country, and not even just in Canada, but even in other countries abroad. Programs to start housing, if they don't actually modify or assist municipalities in how they regulate, that's a big breaking point. Like, let's give a small example. If you were to say, build a downtown St. John's, let's copy it and put it somewhere else, say, somewhere else outside CBS or something, that would cripple CBS's sewer system. It would cripple their water system. Like, it's not just the development, it's the ramifications down the system, but there is capacity in certain areas. So a municipality needs to look at where is their capacity. It's generally not traffic. It's generally things like our water system and that. And the zoning regulations really slow projects down. Like, I've personally, professionally, multiple housing projects, and I won't say the names of them, but 7 in the last 4 years, and 4 of them are canceled. And City Council would not know about these, because this is before it goes to a vote. This is dealing with zoning, dealing with traffic, dealing with things that are solvable problems, but because the city's regulations are very inflexible, it leaves little room for us to try to improve, and that's really got to change. Like, it's really complicated, but it's something like I feel passionate about, because this is, to me, the single biggest change we can do. If we really allow the ability for development to happen in a way that helps the community but allows flexibility, we can build a lot very quickly.
Miles, I appreciate making time. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much, Patty.
You're
Cheers.
welcome. Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah. There we go. A bunch of candidates coming on. It's a good thing. Line number 2, Jerry, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
Patty, I just want to speak about health care for a few minutes, please.
Okay.
Yesterday, I happened to be listening to Open Line because I was driving, and a lot of times, an awful lot of times, in the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 years, 10 years, I've heard caller after caller after caller after caller calling in, complaining about our healthcare system. I don't recall ever hearing anyone calling in and being generally complimentary about our healthcare system. There probably was, but I just never heard of them.
Yeah, lots of them.
Lots of people?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can end this call now then. That's good.
Oh, I wasn't trying to end the call, but people do indeed call and praise the doctors and the nurses in one ward or another, or one personal care home or another, or long-term care home or another. So it absolutely does happen. Does it happen as frequently as complaints? No.
Okay, no, yeah, and mine was a bit more broader. Not only the doctors and the nurses, but our system in general. I don't see the problem with our system to the degree that the majority of callers do. I mean, we live in a province where we have a very small population. You know that. The general public knows that. We're dispersed from hell, west, and crooked in little rockholes and rock nannies, and there's a few in small towns like Grand Falls and Gander, and we got one very small city called St. John's, small by mainland standards. And, what do people expect? If the government is to provide, not the government, if the taxpayer is to provide the service that some of these naysay callers want, what's the reaction going to be when their income taxes goes up to provide that utopia of service that they dream of, given our geography and our population and our tax base?
Well, I don't know. It's a pretty big question. But we spend about $4 billion on healthcare in this province, so I'm not so sure money is the actual concern necessarily. But I don't think people are being unfair when wondering why there's over 100,000 people in the province can't find a family doctor. I don't think people are being unfair if we're not hitting national standards on timelines for things like cardio surgeries. So, I mean, I think a lot of the concerns are completely legitimate. I don't think anyone expects healthcare to be absolutely perfect. I think they just want it to be better.
Patty, I'm a living example of people who have had to avail of our medical system repeatedly, from open heart surgery to the list goes on and on and on over the last 40 years or so. And I have never been on a waiting list as long as a lot of your, not your callers, but the callers to this program talk about. I have never had trouble getting to see a doctor. I have never had trouble getting a referral to a specialist, and I've been referred to many. I'm not talking without evidence here. I have never been treated by the system in a less than good manner. So I don't know where all these complainers are coming from.
Just because you've had a different experience than others doesn't mean that everyone has had the positive experience that you had with wait times and referrals or what have you. I mean, just take something as fundamental as an MRI. Sometimes people are waiting 2 years. There was a story in the media where a woman was waiting for an MRI. By the time she got it, it was discovered that she had a cancerous tumor, and it was too late. So I don't think those are unfair concerns, questions, or complaints, personally.
Absolutely not. There's somebody, no doubt, in any system, in any province, and I feel bad for these people that did have to wait. But that happens, I'm sure, in every jurisdiction. We don't hear about it because we live in Newfoundland and Labrador, but I mean, to listen anyway, just to make things short, because I know you got a lot of other callers. Me personally, it's only me on this call now, nobody else, only me and you. I'm sick of hearing an overabundance of negativity. And why don't the government do something about it? The government is only the people. If you want something done about it, get off your horse or your rear hen, if that's allowed on public airways, and do something about it instead of just calling into open line shows and complaining.
Do something such as?
We're living in a democracy, Patty. Nothing comes easy in a democracy, but if you put the energy into it, 1/10 of the energy into trying to get some changes made as you put into complaining, something might be done in a positive way.
I don't think individuals hold a whole lot of power in making healthcare delivery changes.
Absolutely, Patty. You know the difference to that. You're just trying to goat me now. But individuals
I've got no interest in
differences.
baiting you, Terry, to be honest with you.
Yes, you do. But anyway, individuals, you can hang up on me now if you can't take criticism. But
what are you whining about?
Individuals, I'm not whining. Don't you start whining either. Individuals can't make changes on their own. No, that's true. You've got to get organization and get more than individuals. We've had many things done in our history that was started by an individual, and it snowballed. It wasn't easy. It took time. It took effort. It took blood, sweat, and tears. But eventually it got done. Now, the easy way out is we do nothing. We call into open line shows. We write editorials. We, in the coffee shops, we just spend our time complaining. That's the easy way.
Okay. Complaining also comes in the form of identifying issues. And until people understand where the shortfalls are, then making positive change is sort of just flying blind. So I think I understand your point about complaining. I probably more than just about anyone else listening to this program hear more complaints than most people. I'll put that out there. But the system itself is pretty much in the hands of elected officials and senior bureaucrats. What I can do is help people who are listening and who call to help people understand where we are coming up short and what we might be able to do about it. So as much as we talk about the complaints, I also do my level best to incorporate some of the things that can make the system better, whether it be, a keen focus by the government to try to keep us out of the hospital, to keep us out of interacting with healthcare by addressing things like the social determinants of health. So I try to add solution-based commentary as much as people will add complaints.
And you do an excellent job of it. And this is why, I'm not criticizing you. You're on the positive end of the spectrum. You are a very good listener. You come up with excellent suggestions. Why do you think I'm spending time calling you this morning if I didn't think that?
All good. It's no problem. It's never anything personal. You and I have never met, so it can't be anything personal, obviously. Terry, final thoughts before I have to take a break.
Well, that's it. But basically, I know our healthcare system has areas where there's downfalls. I know there's shortcomings, and but we have to look at the broader spectrum. Look at our tax base. Look at our population. Look at how spread out we are. Look at our style of living, our diet that our traditional Newfoundlanders have become accustomed to. Look at all these factors. It's like someone wanting new pavement on all their branch roads. Sure, we all want new pavement, but can we provide it given our tax base without increasing taxes? And the hoopla that's going to lead to. So sometimes you got to sit back and have a sober second thought on some of this stuff, and devote some of your energy to try to fix the problem, rather than just spending an overabundance of your time complaining about the problem and shooting down the people who's trying to do their best.
Appreciate the call, Terry. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's see here. Let's start with line number 3. Good morning, Michelle Noftel. You're on the air.
Morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing okay. How about you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for taking my call this morning.
No problem.
I'm calling in to, I just wanted to make folks aware of an offering. It's a workshop. I practice, I'm a counselor, a grief and music integrated counselor, and I practice out of the Calm Place in St. John's. We've just recently opened a second location on Kemont Road. And in that space, we have a beautiful new group room where we are expanding our offerings and our services. And a workshop that's happening in just a couple of weeks' time on Sunday, June 29th, is a grief and music workshop that I'm facilitating. So I wanted to make people aware that this is happening. We don't make a whole lot of space for grief in our culture. So this is an opportunity for people who are experiencing or are supporting somebody in their life who are experiencing grief to come and spend some time exploring what the grief experience is actually like, ways to cope through it, including incorporating music in their coping strategies.
How so?
Oh, well, so music has long been a source of comfort for people, as you know, and entertainment and ways of connecting. But music can also be a way for people to help process different experiences that they go through. Specifically with grief, sometimes it's hard to know even where to start. Grief is, as opposed to it being, a step-by-step process, which is a bit of a misunderstanding out there. It's a bit of a tangling, messy experience sometimes with a lot of different emotional components, such as denial and anger and sadness, of course, anxiety and depression. There's a lot that goes in that experience in and of itself. The music can be a way of helping folks manage the different emotions that come with grief. Music can be a way of helping to process in terms of sometimes, music that has lyrics can be a stepping off point when certain lines resonate with people or remind them of different experiences that they've had, can bring up nostalgia. And it can be a way through when sometimes it's hard to know even where to start because it's such an overwhelming time for folks.
You can manage emotion with music. There's no doubt about it. Music can evoke emotions, but you get to set the channel. You get to set the type of music. You get to let your emotions drive what might be soothing or uplifting or whatever the right word is, or calming, whatever the emotion you're trying to go for. Because I listen to music a lot, as you know, and it's a great escape for me. And sometimes it really can take my mind off what has been bothering me. So this makes a lot of sense, Michelle. So where and when, once again, are you offering this particular program?
Thanks, Patty. So this is happening on Sunday, June 29th at the Calm Place at our new location on 300 Kenmount Road. It's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, about an hour and a half. And folks can, anyone interested can reach out to us at admin@calmplace.ca. And our phone number is 709-733-2256.
And I have all of that information in my email inbox if someone wants to reach out and get it from me if they didn't have a chance to jot it down. Michelle, thank you very much for making time.
Oh, thanks very much, Patty.
My pleasure.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
It is time for the news. When we come back, Jim wants to talk about road work and Bill about John Abbott's resignation, and then plenty of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Jim, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Great today. How about you?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Patty, I just wanted to call in to share an experience I had. I traveled across the island on May 30th to go to Port aux Basques, and just west of Cornerbrook, Pinchgut. From there out to beyond Stephen Crossing, there's a construction signs out. The brush cutters were out. However, I was there at 7:15 in the evening, and there wasn't a single worker to be seen. And I just thought it might be a one-off. But I came back on June 10th, 2 nights ago, and the signs were still out, and I can tell you it resulted in worker safety is paramount, but it's also a responsibility of the workers to remove the signs when there's no actual construction work. The consequence of not removing the signs, we had a bottleneck of traffic. Tractor trailers, every now and 30 kilometers for over probably a 40, 50-mile distance, and then we get to the passing lanes, then it was like a Daytona 500 with people passing on solid lines trying to get ahead of the tractor trailers. So I just want to pass along as a safety concern. It's a two-way street, and it's paramount that worker safety is always paramount. It's the most important thing for us. But we're creating, by not removing our signs, safety hazard for the motors who are probably less than patient. And then you have probably, if it was coastal, I would think 30 travel trailers from tourists coming in, and it just caused the whole frame of traffic from down the Colorado Valley right up to Cornerbrook. And I just think it's something that perhaps, and I didn't take note of the company's name, or I would have reached out to them, the importance of them removing their signs in the evenings, because it does have consequences to others that are traveling.
Of course it does. I get these concerns frequently. What we're told when we reach out to, whether it be the department and or the heavy civil industry, is they say that sometimes roadwork that looks like it might have been completed might not be. Things like, for instance, shoring up the shoulder of the road and other things that might not be fully completed to make them remove their signs. People suggest to me that, well, it's just being lazy or not wanting to pay a bit of overtime for people to collect the signs at the end of the day. But I get frustrated when I see the signs and the slowdown that takes place when there's no activity, period.
Absolutely. Yeah. Patty, the other night, there was a construction crew, what I'd say construction work at Pinchgut, and that was fine. I know they're doing road work and shoulders and guardrail repairs and bridging and so forth, but the particular piece of equipment, the brush cutters are parked down into the easement, if you might, and not a worker to be seen after 7 o'clock in the evening, but your signs are left out, and that poses the consequence of that certainly poses a health risk and a safety risk to those who are still traveling. And like I say, Patty, I was fine. I said my crew was on 100 kilometers an hour, come on. But when you're getting out of the construction zone, then you get bottlenecks of 4 or 5 tractor trailers. And when you're coming up some of these grades on the West Coast, as you're familiar with, I expect 40, 50 kilometers an hour, a truckload of freight must be a challenge for them guys. But nobody can pass. and people trying to be respectful, and yet if you pull out then of course if you're ticketed, you're facing double fines, which I don't have no problem with.
Yeah, I mean, the fines are the way they are for a reason, but the road signs being left out is an interesting conversation, and once again, that's what the heavy civil crowd have told me, that, what appears to be done might not be done, and so consequently they are told they have to leave their signs out. But I'll go back to the drawing board and see if they can speak to your concerns this morning, whether it be area specific or in general. What?
I just want to put it out there. I'm not going to belabor it. I think I made my point, and certainly you're well aware of it. But I think the message needs to go back to the industry that when the work is completed, whether it's 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the evening, these guys should be coming down because they're causing a potential risk to the motorists.
Fair enough. I appreciate the time and the concern. I'll do some follow-up on your behalf.
Thank you, Paddy, and I hope everybody has safe travels on the highways. They're doing a great job in clearing the brush back. I will give them that. It certainly makes it much easier to see any moose or other animals maybe on the road. But they're doing a great job, and if we can improve road safety for all of us, we're all winners. Anyway, thanks for your time, Paddy.
I appreciate yours, Jim. All the best.
Okay, bye now.
Okay, bye-bye. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to line number 1. Bill, you're on the air.
Yes, I think I'll just take you off speaker here, Paddy.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, I just wanted to call about John Abbott. I was really surprised this morning when I heard the announcement.
I was a little surprised as well, to be honest. Hello? Bill, on line number 1?
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, no, I just wanted to call about John Abbott. I was surprised this morning when I woke up and I heard that he'd resigned.
Other than surprise, what else is a takeaway based on what Mr. Abbott has done?
Well, I was looking forward to, he took over the ministry for the Newfoundland or Labrador housing, and he said he seemed like he was going to be doing some new things and doing things differently there, and I was disappointed that he's not going to be back. I think he's made a great contribution, and he seems to be a man who's willing to make more of a contribution. I'm just a little disappointed he's not going to run again.
Yeah, no, I don't know if that's based on the 2021 kerfuffle, but he's still going to be in cabinet right through the summer and up until the next election. And I don't know if his decision not to run again is entirely based on 2021 or he's just met the end of the road.
Okay, yeah, maybe so. I don't know, but I thought he was a good addition to have there. He's good. I thought he was a good member. He was, he's from the downtown, and he seemed to offer some good representation. Yeah. So anyway, I was just disappointed. I'd like to see him back at it. I wouldn't like to see him. I thought he's done great stuff over the years. Yeah.
I would imagine we'll get another opportunity to speak with John Abbott before he's fully and officially done with politics. And, we'll dig into some of that stuff about things that he has done or has not done and exactly why he's not running again. Now, some of those personal revelations, things like, we'll hear some politicians say just want to spend more time with family and what have you. And fair enough. I mean, because it's probably a busier and tougher job than people realize being an elected official. But I'm sure you're probably not alone in some level of disappointment. I'm sure I'm not alone in being surprised.
Yes, I'm surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's all I want. That's all I wanted to say. I'd say, kudos to John Abbott. He's been up front the last, I'd say at least 10 years. He's been in the mix. And it's sad to not go back at it.
Fair enough, and I'm sure he appreciates your kind words. Thanks for the call this morning.
Oh yeah, sorry, it wasn't a complaint. But the complaint, that's the only place we got these days. There's no editors to the editor anymore. So your only place now is to call and make your contribution over the line. Like I made about a month ago, I did a thing on the Central Slum. I did some research on that, and I called up about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. That's all I had to say. And thanks for your time.
I appreciate yours.
Have a great weekend.
You too, Bill. All the best.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, final break of the morning right now. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to a former Crown prosecutor. That's Mike Murray. Morning, Mike. You're on the air.
Yeah. Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Excellent today. How about you?
Good. I heard you talking about the Jordan case from the Supreme Court of Canada and cases getting thrown out because of delays in your preamble this morning, and I just wanted to call and talk about a couple of recent cases in this province and how Jordan plays into all of it. Sure. So a couple of days ago, they announced that this man in St. Stephen's was being charged with impaired driving causing death. It looks like he was driving the car, got in an accident, and the passenger was thrown from the vehicle and died. But the incident happened like a year ago, and the police didn't lay charges because they were waiting on lab results from the toxicology lab in Ottawa. Now, once upon a time, there were a lot more labs than there are now. There used to be one in Halifax that dealt with Atlantic Canada samples that needed to be tested, but they were closed as part of budget cuts a number of years back. But, I mean, the thing here is that with Jordan, I mean, the police were afraid to lay a charge until they got the lab results back because the clock starts ticking the minute that charges are laid. So here's somebody that the police have reasonable, I mean, it's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, but they got reasonable probable grounds to get a blood sample from him and have it sent to the mainland for testing. So clearly there's some evidence that the accused person was driving a car while under the influence and killed somebody. And yet the people in that small community have to see that person driving every day with no restrictions whatsoever for a year while they wait for the lab results. I mean, that is not only a risk to the public, but it tends to bring the administration of justice into disrepute. And that's a direct result of Jordan. And then a couple of weeks ago, there was a case in Lab City where a man from Quebec who was charged with sexually assaulting a woman from Labrador had his case thrown out over delays. In that case, the judge's decision is not online. I looked, so there's only a media report. But according to the media report, the case was, the delay was added up to be 22 months, so 4 months over the 18 months. And then the case is thrown out, and the victim has no, recompense. I think she even went to court and testified. It was after the trial that they made the application. So, I mean, what are we saying to women and children who are victims of serious sexual offenses when their cases can be thrown out like that? Especially since in this case, there was a delay of almost a year that didn't count against the Crown, but I think it's still important. Buddy's lawyer went on maternity leave. I assume the judge asked him if he wanted to get a different lawyer and move the case forward, and he said, "No, I'm good, I'll wait." So how can you rag the puck for a year and then complain your rights were violated? There's something that doesn't smell right there. And the old case on delay was called Askoff. And under Askoff, because people have always had a right to a speedy trial. That's been there, well, not always, but for 40 years since the Charter came into effect. But under the old case, Askoff, you had to show that, A, you were diligent in trying to move the matter forward, which wouldn't have applied here, and B, that your case was somehow prejudiced by the delay. And, how does a 4-month delay prejudice anybody, especially when you were willing to agree to or even request a delay of almost a year because because you didn't want to change lawyers?
Sorry to interrupt. There's a lot to this. The cases that are getting thrown out is one thing, and there are some exemptions to stop the watch, stop the clock inside the 18 months in provincial court, 30 months in Supreme Court. Yeah. And the one thing that I did mention this morning, something you mentioned to me in the past, is just a bit more efficient way of scheduling court cases in Supreme Court in particular.
I think that is a major issue, and I think it really needs to be dealt with. In order for a case to go ahead, especially in Supreme Court, for the Crown, they have to get everything has to go right. If a witness gets sick and the case has to be postponed. I mean, you're probably talking coming back in a year's time. So if you've got, and lots of times Crowns are forced to go to trial without all the witnesses there because, let's say you got a sexual assault trial where there's 4 complainants. The first time is supposed to go to trial, one of the complainants has been diagnosed with something serious and won't be able to testify, and the trial has to be postponed. And a year later, when it comes up again, a different victim has a health issue or some other kind of issue, or one of the crucial police officers, or one of the witnesses from the lab. I mean, you can't afford 2 bumps, so you might go ahead without the lab evidence, or you might have to go ahead without one of the victims, because if there's 2 bumps, you're going to be over the line. I mean, it's a really it's such a hard rule that doesn't take account of any of the circumstances that can happen. Also, I mean, let's say. Here's a classic example. Under the criminal code and the charter, you have to be brought before a judge within 24 hours of being detained. Sometimes the police or circumstances or the courts means that can't happen. Sometimes maybe in provincial court in St. John's, there's been 15 people arrested that day, and there's just not time to call them all. And somebody spends an extra night in the cells. Well, the courts have decided that if your rights were violated in that way, one of the things you could get is a reduction in sentence. But with the Jordan stuff, the only remedy seems to be to throw out the charges, and the Supreme Court the Supreme Court of Canada seems to be unwilling to accept anything less. And I don't really think that's fair to victims or society. I agree the courts could be doing them, especially the Supreme Court here could be doing a much better job of scheduling cases to avoid Jordan issues. They could prioritize that, and they could double book, and they could bump civil cases for criminal cases. But they tend to take a really bureaucratic line on allocation of court resources. And that certainly doesn't help, and it certainly causes some of the problems. But I think part of the problem is with the law as it exists right now.
It certainly has changed the way law enforcement conduct investigations and the timing of laying charges. That much we've seen clearly, and they admit it because it's obviously it's right in front of you. There was one instance out in the Goulds where there was a heavy police presence. Nobody really knew what was going on, but then weeks later the charges were laid as a result of that particular raid or search or whatever the right word is. Mike, you've had the last word this morning. I'll give you another few seconds before I have to say goodbye.
Well, I was just going to say, you see that a lot in those big drug trafficking cases.
Yeah.
I mean, it can take, they raid a house, they seize 5 kilos of what they think is cocaine and 5 firearms. Well, the firearms have to be tested and the drugs have to be tested. In the meantime, whoever the accused fronted the drugs off is out, tens of thousands of dollars, and Buddy has to get right back on the bus to make the money back So, I mean, you're actually, the crime continues when the charges get delayed.
Absolutely right. Mike, as usual, I appreciate your time this morning.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Good show today. Big thank you to all hands. And we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.